Good evening, all. Welcome to the 14th lecture of the National Conference. Today we have Dr. Dineshan Vadakanil to be presenting to us. And the moderator for the day is Sanoop. He is a PhD scholar of the department and he is working on sanitizing the empire, colonial subordinate salariat in Malabar. Sanoop, please take over the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sheba. A very good evening and warm welcome to everyone. Join us for another session of the 7-day online national conference conducted by Department of History, Sri Shankaracharya University of Kaladi, in honor of Professor Vasalathil and Dr. M.T. Narayanan on their retirement. For this webinar is Critique and Constructions, Contemporary Writings on Histories of Kerala. This webinar provides a platform to interact with new generations of historians and social scientists working on Kerala's past, bringing forward a revised version of existing assumptions that dwell into fresh perspectives and conceptualization. Today, we have among us one of the most distinguished scholars, Dr. Dineshan V., Assistant Professor, Government Arts and Science College, Puduma, Kasaragod, to enlighten us with his presentation titled Traditional Rites, Modern Struggles, a Theyyam Performers' Contestations over Uduvilakku in North Malabar. Before we begin, a few instructions for the participants. All the participants are requested to mute their audio and turn off their video throughout the session. Attendance of the participants will be recorded automatically. If any of the participants are still new and are unable to rejoin the session, they can continue with us through our live stream in YouTube. If you have any queries in the session, please send the chat box and box for the comment in your YouTube. And I will read it to speaker on behalf after the presentation. With further delay, I invite our Enfield scholar Surya to formally introduce Dr. Dineshan V. and for the welcome address. Surya, over to you.
Thank you, Sanu. Hello, good evening. It's my privilege to welcome all of you to the 7-day online national conference, Critique and Constructions, Contemporary Writings on Histories of Kerala, in honor of Dr. A. Vasalathil and Dr. M.T. Narayanan on their retirement, conducted by the Department of History, Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi. Today, we have Dr. Dineshan Vadakanil, teaches history at Government Arts and Science College, Uduma, Kasaragod. We are really fortunate to have you here, sir. He will be talking on traditional rites, modern struggles, a Theyyam performers, contestations over Uduvilakku in North Malabar. Dr. Dineshan Vadakanil has his PhD from University of Bergen, Norway, and did postdoctoral research at the Department of Social Anthropology, University of Bergen, having previously worked as academic coordinator of Kerala Council for Historical Research, Trivandrum. He is research awardee of UGC and recipient of research grant from ICSSR. Apart from contributions of scholarly articles in both English and Malayalam, he has 2 books. First one is Anushtanam Kalam Samuham Theyyate Adharamaki Chila Anveshanangal, and second one is Islamum Keralavum Samskaram Rashtriyam, to his credit. I welcome the distinguished speaker of the day, Dr. Dineshan Vadakanil, to deliver the lecture. Welcome, sir. I also welcome all other participants to the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sanoop, and Surya. And I also thanked the Department of History, Sanskrit University, for inviting me as a speaker to the webinar. Actually, I feel proud because since the webinar is organized in honor of two scholars in history, M.T. Narayanan and Paslathil, who are retiring from service in the coming months. I'm sure that they are only retiring from their teaching profession, but will continue their academic pursuit even after retirement. I wish them best. What I am going to present today is a paper-like thing, a paper which is only in the making, actually. I hope your comments will help me to improve or rethink on the issue which I am going to talk today. Basically, it is an ethnography of an event of ostracism or Urivilakku. Looking at its dynamics, I try to understand the question of modernity as it is felt in the late 20th century North Malabar. I'll begin with a short note on what the event is. Then we'll move on to explore, elaborate the whole complexity. But somebody told me that it will be good if I can tell in advance the methodology I followed in analyzing the things which I am going to talk. I will tell that in one or two sentences, and if there is any requirement, I will come back to that sometimes later. It is actually, as you know, even though I teach history, I'm trained in anthropology as well. The anthropology, especially in School of Anthropology, is called Manchester School of Anthropologists, like Victor Turner and all. They developed a kind of method to collect data and analyze the issue which you are studying in anthropological way. It is called situation analysis. Earlier, I used the situation analysis to understand an event happened in a ritual space lasting 4 days, and that turned to be my PhD thesis. And basically, taking insight from situation analysis, I here also try to understand what is happening in a small area when an event like Urivilakku ostracism comes up. Of course, it was happened 25 years back. So I was not able to participate or in one way or other observe the things happened in the past. Rather, I was going back to the situation, interviewing people who were involved in it, trying to collect actual materials, actual documents the issue produced, and moving around the places of importance of this issue and things like that. So it is a kind of situation analysis with a historical tinge. And it can also be said that it is a situation analysis with a phenomenological bent of mind. This is about my methodology, because you may wonder what I am going to do in a different sense, because I'll be giving a long narration of the event happened. So sometimes you may feel what is important of giving such a long description of an event. This is important because if you want to understand certain dynamics of an event happening somewhere, you have to have a sense of how to understand even the minute details of the things. And small things happening in a particular situation may have its effect, and it may change the whole meaning of the event which you are analyzing. So this is about a very rough idea about the method I have followed to collect data as well as to analyze the event which I studied. I hope I didn't confuse you, but the only thing you need to understand is that this is a kind of situation analysis with a bent of mind, phenomenological bent of mind. So, as you know, the title of my presentation is Traditional Rites, Modern Struggles. Here, all the words like concepts like tradition, modern, all these are in inverted comma. It's a performers' contestation over Uri Vilakku. In May 1994, Manakkad and Rama Peruvannan, a Theyyam ritual performer living in Yezhom village at Kannur district of Kerala, received a letter from a shrine of the locality intimating him that he is removed from his customary right of providing ritual services. This customary right in our local vocabulary is called Cheru Janmam. It's a Cheru Janmam right, little birth right, that is what it says. This is the letter which he was served. You may not be able to read that properly because it's an old paper and some words are it's not clear in that photostat. Anyway, the removal was stated as Uri Vilakku or ostracism and was imposed by a goddess shrine, Kurumbakavu, owned by the Thiyya, a caste above in hierarchy to the Theyyam performing Vannan caste, the later to which Rama Peruvannan was born. Uri Vilakku was enforced on the charge that Rama Peruvannan had violated the tradition of not to perform Theyyam in the houses belongs to the Pulaya caste. Rama Peruvannan, however, fought against Uri Vilakku by appropriating provisions facilitated by modern institutions. He filed a police case, approached judicial bodies to treat his removal as an atrocity against people belonging to the scheduled caste, and exposed the public that this act reveals the persistence of the otherwise concealed medieval feudal mentality even in the late 20th century Malabar. Except writing an editorial in their mouthpiece newspaper condemning the act of removal, the intervention of the radical political party that dominates the area and ruled the local panchayat was very limited. This was felt embarrassing since their local acceptance was due to their political vendetta of creating an egalitarian society. Meanwhile, a group of local intellectuals, including a few Theyyam performers, intervened, demanding that Theyyam must be seen as an art rather than ritual, and those who perform Theyyam as artists, whereby the ostracism will become a clear case of the denial of an individual's right to labor. At some point of confronting the removal and ongoing protest, Theyyam performers, irrespective of their caste differences, joined together to establish a trade union for themselves, a more antithetic to the existing practice of organizing each Theyyam performing caste under the respective caste identity. The newly formed trade union demanded that the state should declare Theyyam as an art, fix wage for the work, and institute a welfare fund and old age pension for the artist. The shrine retaliated such move by forming a consortium of 7 other Thiyya shrines in the vicinity, urging that our tradition is under threat. Exchange of arguments, threatening of life, legal and media interventions, and public meeting efforts for a while. Modern institutional intervention eventually forced the shrine to restore the performer's lost right, the invisible knot of caste hierarchy and social humiliation, but forced him to discontinue the ritual service. In 3 years, the trade union formed by Theyyam performers disappeared. Meanwhile, the shrine continued the spree of renovating its structure and reviving its ritual. To bring the whole dynamic of the event in this talk is actually unwieldy. So I would attempt only to make sense of the contradictory ways in which Uri Vilakku had been appropriated by those who were suffered and humiliated directly from the ostracism. They are the Theyyam performing caste and the Pulaya. Both of them ventured to challenge the continuing inegalitarian practices. A key instrument to this challenge is Theyyam ritual, a tradition otherwise construed as an institution reproducing exploitative social order, but now had been appropriated as a potent to transgress boundaries set by tradition. On the other side, the attempt to organize Theyyam performers as a trade union and the demand to declare Theyyam as an art both emerged from modern individualizing thinking and valued as a potent effective to challenge vestiges of model evils with less result, and such arguments soon disappeared from the public sphere. Was that surfacing a situation of paradox? How does it define the socio-political process of the late 20th century Kerala, Malabar? Does it demand a fresh reflection upon the question of modernity? My talk will proceed with these questions as key analytical marks. But first, I will provide a brief description of the Theyyam ritual and the event.
Dr. Dineshan, can I interrupt, please?
Yeah, sure.
Can you run that presentation full screen, or maybe you could just read it out so that I'm curious to know the content.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it full screen now?
Not yet. Maybe you could read it out. Just curious to just.
Is it full screen now?
Not yet. I'm so sorry to interrupt. If it's not possible. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
സാറേ വലതുവശത്ത് താഴെ അതിന്റെ ഓപ്ഷൻ.
That's what I clicked actually.
സാറേ കേൾക്കാമോ?
കേൾക്കാം.
വലതുവശത്ത് താഴെ.
Is it full screen now?
Not yet. It's okay. It's okay if you can just read it out some parts and then we can go in. So sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's just very difficult to read. Anyway, I'll try to read. I have a copy of that letter with me so that I can read from that, not from the PowerPoint. So it says that Manakkadan Ramaperuvannan വായിച്ച് അറിയുന്നതിലേക്കായി 7ാം ശ്രീ കുറുമ്പ ഭഗവതി ക്ഷേത്ര കമ്മിറ്റി എഴുതി അറിയിക്കുന്നത്. പെരുവണ്ണാൻ ശ്രീ ടി ഗോപാലൻ എന്ന ആളുടെ വീട്ടിൽ മുത്തപ്പന്റെ വെള്ളാട്ടം കെട്ടുന്നുണ്ട് എന്ന വിവരം ക്ഷേത്ര കമ്മിറ്റി അറിയുന്നു. പെരുവണ്ണാൻ അങ്ങനെ മുത്തപ്പന്റെ വെള്ളാട്ടം കെട്ടുന്ന വിവരം ക്ഷേത്ര കമ്മിറ്റിയെ അറിയിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. ഹരിജനങ്ങളുടെ വീടുകളിൽ പെരുവണ്ണാൻ മുത്തപ്പനെ കെട്ടുന്ന സമ്പ്രദായം നിലവിലില്ല. പെരുവണ്ണാനെ അങ്ങനെ കെട്ടണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ പൊടിക്കടത്തിൽ വെച്ച് അപ്രകാരം ചെയ്യുന്നതിൽ കമ്മിറ്റിക്ക് ആക്ഷേപമില്ല. അല്ലാത്ത പക്ഷം ക്ഷേത്ര കമ്മിറ്റി ഈ പ്രശ്നത്തെ വളരെ ഗൗരവപൂർവ്വം കാണുന്നതാണ് എന്ന് അറിയിക്കുന്നു. This is the first letter. There is a second letter as well. This is the second letter. They said that he is removed from his Charujanmam right. That's the issue of ostracism. This is first letter is what I displayed here. It's only it's a kind of threatening letter that if he performs the Theyyam for the Muttappan for the in a Polaya house, he will be ostracized. That will be taken seriously. I will come to that in a moment.
Thank you.
I think I don't have to detail what the Theyyam is because most of them may be knowing what Theyyam is and all. Anyway, it's a form of ritual worship specific to worship of ancestral spirit and local deities, specific to North Malabar. And there are many communities, including Vannan, Malayan, Tulluvelan, Pulayan, Mavilan, and Kopalan perform Theyyam. There are hundreds of Theyyam deities, and many of them have the status of caste or lineage deity. They are manifest in specific ritual spaces like shrines and tharavads. However, an ancestral divinity named Muthappan, performing Muthappan created the whole issue here. So, Muthappan in the last 3 decades has received high acceptance across castes, since he easily moves beyond traditional sacred location into modern public spaces like taxi stand, railway station, and industrial premises. It is the manifestation of such a divinity at the front yard of a Pulaya house that had created the whole issue of Uruvilakku. That's the importance of the whole context. And now I will narrate what the event is. The present case of Uruvilakku began with the committee of a local shrine named Kurumbakavu serving a notice of Manakad and Ramaperivan, and Dalit ritual performer of Theyyam belonged to Vannan caste, cautioning him that there will be a repercussion if he conduct ritual manifestation of Muthappan at the residence of a Harijan. So I already read that letter, violating the age-old custom of not do so and without getting permission from the committee of the Bhagavati shrine. Actually, the Harijan in quote referred to in the letter was Mr. T. Gopalan. He was an engineer working in the Public Work Department of Government of Kerala. Ramaperivannan did not succumb to the threat. As agreed, he performed the rite for Muthappan at Gopalan's newly constructed home at home. The shrine officials immediately reacted by serving the second notice declaring that Ramaperivanan's disobedience of customary rule is a blatant violation of social norms. Therefore, he is removed from his Chirujanmam, or little birthright, of performing Theyyam and all other ritual services to the village. Soon the shrine circulated a decision to all its members, people of other castes living in the locality, to several shrines inside the village and the neighboring villages. They further instructed the villagers not to invite Ramaperivannan to do any ritual service. They also sought support from the newly formed consortium of shrines to make sure that Ramaperivannan is not invited to do Theyyam or other rituals in their respective area. To this forbade put Perivannan out of work, of course, and made his survival difficult. Therefore, he had to approach the nearby police station to register a complaint against the high-handedness of the shrine on his life and work. A case was registered under the provision of the Protection of Human Rights Act and Denial of Rights of Labor. Later, when the issue grew from being a mere local incident to a larger problem of caste discrimination and denial of right to live, an additional case was filed under the Scheduled Caste Atrocity Acts as well. Initially, the local police did not find any merit in the case, and they unsuccessfully negotiated with both parties to settle the issue. This forced Ramaperivannan to submit a memorandum before the Chief Minister and many others, including the District Collector, detailing the issue and pleading immediate intervention. This triggered public debate. A few newspapers reported Uruvilakku as an obsolete practice of denying right to live in a democratic state. Those who sympathized with the Ramaperivannan had organized protest meetings, including a day-long Upavasam, sitting hunger. And different organizations and individuals made statements condemning the act as brutal, irrational, and regressive. Those who opposed to Uruvilakku pronounced that it was a vestige of medieval feudalistic mentality and an attempt to pull back the advantages that modernity and social reform had brought forth for the depressed class. The mounting public pressure forced the state and institutions on the one side and the shrine on the other to find resolution. To avoid impending arrest and court case, the office bearers of the shrine issued a press release denying that they had not ostracized Ramaperivannan. However, this did not prevent the police from entering the village, arresting and jailing the signatories of the letter of ostracism. So there were 3 people were arrested, and I was able to interview one among those who got arrested. And he is now not participating in any of the ritual of this shrine. he now has an kind of antagonistic attitude towards the whole aspects of the Kurumbaka. In the middle of all these developments, an all-party meeting was summoned to settle the case at the chamber of District Collector Kannur. A settlement was arrived. The decision was to reinstate Rama Peruvannan and restore his Chirajanmam right. Despite signing the agreement, the shrine still found other way to forbid Raman Peruvannan entering the shrine and doing ritual services. Though they agreed at the meeting, but immediately after they withdrew. And now they found out other ways to deny him entering the shrine. Now, their objection was that Peruvannan for long had stopped undertaking other customary responsibilities of the village, like providing martyrs, washed clothes for purificatory purposes, and performing Adi. It's a ritual of warding of evils from every household conducted during the month of Karkidakam. All these, Peruvannan is not doing these two rites, so he cannot enter the shrine. That's what the shrine authority is told. On the next day of signing the agreement, they managed to get published a report in newspapers on the decision of the meeting with a misguided title and misinterpreted agreement. Instead of reporting that Peruvannan is reinstated, the news read, a committee will decide who will do Theyyam at Kurumbaka. A news meant to facelift and legitimize the action of the shrine and intimidate Rama Peruvannan to withdraw himself from the scene. It's the somewhere there. Okay. When that attempt was also failed, the shrine had to reinstate the customary right to Rama Peruvannan. However, the punitive attitude continued in the form of conscious neglection of his presence in the shrine and leaving him to move alone in the crowd facing humiliation. But Rama Peruvannan continued his fight to survive. Therefore, the tension continued. 2 years later, the shrine resorted to yet another strategy to expel him. Every year, during the Malayalam month of Meenam, the shrine observes a rite called Puram. When the rite takes place, it is mandatory that the Chirajanmam right holder must play drum chanda. While the Puram festival of the year 1997 was on, interpreting that the agreement arrived at was applicable only for doing Theyyam and not for Puram festival, the shrine officials forbade Peruvannan executing his customary right. Once again forced Rama Peruvannan to lodge complaint to the district collector. The government intervened and asked once again to reinstate Peruvannan. They did. Thus, on 9th May, when the major sacrificial rite of the shrine was going on, Rama Peruvannan was re-invited. Though technically he was reinstated, neglect and humiliation continued till he conceded his right in favor of his younger brother and leaving the shrine forever. He had to, he fought as much as he could, but he had to finally leave the shrine. That's what happened. Even though modern institutions supported him, there were so much hue and cry for his cause, nothing had happened. The decision of the shrine prevailed in a sense. What it says, the whole event tells us that a person who fought for his traditional customary right by using modern institutions had to surrender before a modern collective, in code, which otherwise appeared as traditional. The latter retaliated his move by appropriating traditional institutions like caste and ritual, whereas the first one fought with the support of the institutions like district collector, police, media, judicial system and all. Here by modern collective, I mean the newly emerged shrine structure and the shrine's newly assumed power to impose ostracism. Till 1970s, the shrine was under the sole ownership of a Thiyatharava. That was the structure in the medieval period and even the early 20th century. other Tiya Taravards had an ordinary casteman had no right over the shrine except to offer worship. That means it's a single Tarawad owned shrine. The senior member of the Tarawad discharged priestly function and executed matters concerning the shrine. However, there was a powerful landlord belonging to upper caste as Koima, under whose supervision and permission only the shrine could take any decision. If anybody wants to be removed from his hereditary right, either the Koima or should do it, or they should approach the local ruler, Naduvari or Melkoima, a Brahmin ritual head of the locality, for permission to do so. Socio-political change in the second half of the 20th century largely restructured the composition of the shrine. The power rested in the hands of the Tarawad, went into the hands of the whole community men of the locality. Now it came to have secretaries and presidents elected among its members, and they absorbed authority from the priest. They were the sole authority till middle of the 20th century. And this newly formed office bearers like secretaries and presidents pushed the latter, the priest, as mere ritual servants. The authority of Koima, Naduvari, and Melkoima were either neglected or reduced as a formal positions. This shift in the structure and function of the shrine, with adherence to some traditional elements, meanwhile erasure of a few others, constituted what I would argue is a pastiche of a modern collective. It is this newly achieved authority, but disguised as tradition, paraded throughout the imposition of Urivilak. This puzzling situation and its effect could be further analyzed looking at two other manifestations evident after the imposition of Urivilak. One is the establishment of MADA, Malabar Area Theyyam Artists Association, a class organization for Theyyam performers, and appropriation of the ritual performance of the Muthappan by Pulaya. While the first assumed the value of modernity in the struggle against exploitation and discrimination, the second uphold ritual itself as an appropriate instrument in the resistance against humiliation. Now, these are the two things which I am going to discuss now. One is how the MADA as a trade union of the performers emerged, and second, and what are the strategies they used to address the whole issue of Urivilakki and similar issues of Theyyam performance. Secondly, I will look into how Theyyam, how the Pulaya has appropriated ritual itself instead of the modern institution, how they went back to the ritual, the traditional institution itself to address the issues raised by the Urivilakki. So a critical moment in the course of struggle against Urivilakku was the establishment of the Malabar Area Theyyam Artist Association. In abbreviation is MATA. It was conceived as an association on the model of a trade union, despite Theyyam performance being a caste-specific occupation and bounded by the operations of caste hierarchy. Till the event of ostracism under discussion, Theyyam performing communities were organized only on the respective caste identity, like Vannan Samudaya Samiti, Uttara Malabar, Malayan Samiti, etc. Except to negotiate with the state in a limited scale, such caste organizations were not successful enough to bring forth the issues of caste discrimination and caste exploitation in the ritual space and beyond. MADA, however, was the first common body of Theyyam performers cutting across caste that functioned, redefining ritual specialists as artists, Theyyam right as an art. MADA mobilized Theyyam performers on class basis, though the foundation for it remained caste-specific hereditary occupation. This paradox was there throughout its history and even contributed its untimely death. This is a letter which saying that this is a trade union and something like that. Malabar Area Theyyam Artists Association was formed in 1994 itself. Theyyam performers belong to different castes attended the meeting. They convened a meeting and performers from different castes attended the meeting. There were deliberations for and against organizing ritual performers on a trade union line. However, the overall mood was in favor of organizing so. The main objective of MADA was to engage in activities of bringing those who were involved in arts in court of Theyyam and Thira into the mainstream society. It is pledged to work towards ending exploitation and to uplift the marginalized Theyyam performers. Also, MADA declared that they will involve in conducting research on various aspects of Theyyam and Thira, honor the performers, work hard for timely restructuring of service wage rules of these artists, and undertake activities to pressurize the government and other related bodies to implement social security schemes for them. The overall intention of the MADA was to organize Theyyam artists in court to be able to engage in their work with dignity, to create a condition for them to live like other workers and be able to protect their family. This is the stated objective of MADA. And here you can see an emphasis on economy. I will come to that in a moment. While establishing a class association of those who survive by engaging in a caste occupation, MADA presumed that it would bring them individual dignity, freedom from centuries-old caste exploitation, and social equality through improvement in economic conditions. It stated it in several ways. For example, I'll tell you only one example. There are many such examples. The opening paragraph of the booklet published by MADA. This is a booklet published by MADA. They stated in this, for example, the opening paragraph of the booklet published by MADA interprets the word coal. Coal is the reward or remuneration a Theyyam performers normally get for his service. So MADA tried to interpret the word coal in a different way. Though in common parlance, the word coal denotes a gift or reward, MADA said it has a wider meaning of bonus. The second meaning, that means the meaning of bonus, perhaps they said it is a real meaning of the word, especially in the ritual context, and they argued that therefore the word coal must be read as a wage plus incentive. This is here you could see we're trying to interpret everything from an economic point of view perspective. The political struggle that MADA had initiated were evidence of the conception of economic security as foundational for social development. For example, in the regional meeting, they demanded the government that pension and other social security funds must be provided for all Theyyam performers. And a memorandum was submitted towards the end to the Chief Minister of the then Chief Minister of Kerala, arguing for asking him to demanding that security scheme should be introduced for the Theyyam performers and like that. Since there hardly was voluntary support from the then existing peasant and workers unions, none of these peasant unions or workers unions supported the causes voluntarily came to support MADA. So MADA convened a meeting of consciously made a move to convene a meeting inviting representatives from all trade unions affiliated to leading political parties. The meeting was attended by representatives from all leading trade unions. MADA explained the difficulty, but there was not much a positive attitude. Though a few representatives of leading trade union identified a cause in what MADA says, there was an overall reluctance to support them, primarily because the ambiguous position of the ritual art specialists in society. It was very difficult for them to make whether a ritual performers should be taken as a worker or not. Of course, even today, larger public in North Malabar has reservation in accepting Theyyam performance as a ritualistic, as an artistic activity, or Theyyam as wage labor. It is rather viewed as a service right inherited on account of being born to a specific lineage that has customary responsibility to serve the village. they intervened. In the initial days of establishment, Mada successfully intervened to defend the Theyyam performance, defend the Theyyam performers when there were cases of denial of justice, of exploitation, and public humiliation, etc. But in short period, they disappeared. The struggle that Mada had undertaken also encouraged Theyyam performers to express in public the continuing caste exploitation and its legitimation by invoking tradition at ritual space. They could now realize that, Theyyam performers could now realize that invocation of tradition to vehemently attack any attempt of the marginalized and excluded to challenge the continuing exploitation is foundational for the reproduction of hierarchical social order. Also, it is not the economic unaffordability of the dominance, but the fear of loosening social domination mattered such invocation. Demand to define a fixed wage in advance rather than accepting a gift in the form of coal evidenced the emergence of reflexive understanding of one's labor and his position in labor relation. Of course, Theyyam is a caste-specific occupation of which knowledge is transferred hereditarily. Though we do not know exactly when Theyyam ritual was born, it could be safely argued that it has achieved its present form somewhere during the medieval period. Therefore, it acknowledged some kind of medieval social order. Meanwhile, the position imagined in the discourses under review is of class, a relation of position bearing in a modern capitalist social world, wherein caste and hereditary occupation has little functional value. How to resolve this contradiction of remaining in caste occupation and arguing for class position was a serious issue. Failure to resolve this contradiction had contributed to the eclipse of Mada after a very short life. Intervention to designate Theyyam performance as labor and change the nature of payment of coal to wage created a discussion on what is and what should be the nature of Theyyam. Is it a ritual or an art? In a booklet published by Mada, the word repeatedly used is art, and the words like ritual and ritual worship are totally absent. Preference of the word art seems to be a conscious political choice. Even the name of the association, Malabar Area Theyyam Artists Association, bears evidence of the preference of art for ritual. It is an association of artists and not of ritual specialists or Theyyam performer caste. This preference for art could further be substantiated looking at the notices and booklet that Mada had published and several and served among the members and general public. For example, the letter of invitation that Mada had distributed requesting general public to attend a meeting they organized in association with the Progressive Art and Literary Association, an organization of left wing, to protest against saffronizing shrines, says there is a conscious movement from, I quote, there is a conscious movement from communal fascist group to seize the field of Theyyam art, and saffronizing shrines on the disguise of protecting ritual. So you could see the emphasis on Theyyam as art instead of ritual here. Why did they emphasize on aspects of art? Modernity views art as the expression of creative individual mind, a willful cultural and rational act. Ritual, on the other hand, is dumped as a repetition of pre-modern, irrational, disembodied action, signifying a society's barbaric nature. This assumption of modernity was immanent in the thinking and political programs of Mada. There was criticism against Theyyam performers organizing as trade union and demanding wage. Such critics viewed it as an attempt to price divine being. I can show you something. This is a protest meeting they conducted. This is some demands. This is a letter to editor published by one C.V. Krishnan Mathur. He says that Theyyam performers should not price Theyyam. ദൈവങ്ങൾക്ക് വിലയിടരുത്. You can see that. They argued that Theyyam was nothing but divine. Those who criticized Mada and their position argued that Theyyam was nothing but divine being rooted in their heart, a sphere where economy has no room. Therefore, both the Theyyam performers and the whole worshippers have responsibility to guard Theyyam from the encroachment of market interests and preserve it into the intimate space of the social. Mada responded to such allegations by stating that forming a class association instead of caste organization is not tantamount to pricing Theyyam and bringing it into market. Instead, it is an attempt to create a space for revealing what exactly happens in the actual site of ritual enactment. Of course, once they received the coal means the remuneration or reward or gift, which in the redefined way was not mere gift, but a wage plus bonus, as I already told, which in past was adequate. The coal was adequate in the past for them to survive. Critics viewing coal as reward or gift that should be accepted without bargaining are a way of disassociating social life from the material needs. Such an attitude makes the life of the performers difficult, since then reward are not the rewards are not bare enough to meet even expenses need for preparing for a Theyyam rite. Though the influence of Mada did not last for long, they were able to expose otherwise unspelled continuity of caste oppression in late 20th century Malabar. It also proposed a possible strategy for ritual specialists to resist the contemporary exploitation. But what is specifically important for the present discussion is that despite a fervent attempt to bring equality, upholding the value that modernity understood, like individualism, art, economic mobility, state intervention, rational and progressive thinking, their efforts had not fetched significant and lasting positive result. Mada developed their political strategy on the assumption that individual liberty and economic opportunities would lead to the erasure of inequality. Modern institutions like trade union and rational acts like art practices seem to have more potential to challenge continuing inequality. The other side of this assumption is that negotiating with the contemporary world by drawing the potential of medieval institutions like ritual and caste would neither fetch respect for individual freedom nor would generate any meaningful challenge to social hierarchy. But what subsequent history shows is the eclipse of Mada on the one side and the intensification of discourse re-illuminating Theyyam as divine being, no less, no more, on the other side. In short, I would argue there was an encompassment of the profane by the ritual. This is about how Mada intervened and in what logic they worked and what was its fate. And how the Pulaya responded to the whole situation. That I will discuss right now. Pulaya community reacted to their humiliating experience due to Uruvilak in a different way. The response was not by invoking the value that modernity upheld, like the Mada upheld, but by appropriating the otherwise considered tradition. As we have seen, Ramaperuvannan was ostracized for him being manifested Muttappan in the front yard of a Pulaya house. So the counter move, right from the beginning, was not to approach modern institutions for some kind of redressal. Rather, it was consolidated on appropriating the right for Muttappan by themselves and for themselves. As soon as Ramaperuvannan was ostracized, the Pulaya community from near and far began to invite him to do the right for Muttappan in their respective houses. He responded to their call positively, and following him, a few other ritual specialists also extended the ritual service to the Pulayas. Such invitations were an open challenge to social dominance who, through ritual, were creating a condition for the reproduction of caste hierarchy. That is, the institution functioning as a key element in the reproduction of social hierarchy had been now appropriate to challenge the very persistence of social hierarchy, where the potential to resist hierarchy had been found not in any institution that modernity has generated, but in the ritual, a traditional institution itself. Most remarkable intervention of the Pulaya came, but not in the form of inviting ritual specialists of the Vannan community to do the Muttappan rite in their residence, but by undertaking the rite and manifestation of Muttappan by themselves. An inspiration for such a turn could have been a letter note published in Malayalam Daily by Y.B. Kannan, an office bearer of Mada, asserting that the Muttappan manifested by Rama Perivannan was a Pulaya Muttappan. This is a letter he published. Rama Perivannan kettiyadu Pulaya Muttappane. You can see that on the slide. Of course, such an affirmative sentence of Pulaya Muttappan resonates a revolutionary statement of the social reformer Sri Narayana Guru, who is fast achieving the status of a divine being of Iravatiya, the community who ostracized Rama Peruvan. The usage of Pulaya Muttappan thus reminded of Renaissance spirit, paradox embedded in the act of Thiya's shrine, and politics and potential of reappropriating tradition for imagining new social order. Till the event of Uruvilakku manifested, manifestation of Muttappan was an exclusive right of Theyyam performing one-man caste. Now the Pulaya realized that an effective challenge to social hierarchy and continuing discrimination and humiliation can be made by manifesting Muttappan by themselves, instead of inviting somebody from the one-man caste to do it for them. The Pulaya also is a Theyyam performing caste, but they did do it for themselves and not for others. Therefore, manifesting Theyyam was a real possibility for them. Within the ritual complex of the Pulaya, they do not have Muttappan Theyyam. Instead, each Pulaya lineage, sometimes even a Tharavad within a lineage, worship an ancestral deity, either in the name of Dharma Devam or under individual name itself. The strong presence of ancestral deity similar to Muttappan did not necessitate the Pulaya to worship Muttappan till the time of Uruvilakku. Therefore, I would argue the appropriation of Muttappan rite is a contemporary way of encompassing one kind of ritual power by another. Achieve this end and thereby to challenge discrimination and inequality, a group of Theyyam performers within the Pulaya caste decided to learn the rite for Muttappan and manifest it. A group was formed. A person called T. Vijayakumar was its leader. He manifested Muttappan, and he manifested Muttappan for Pulayas for 30 times actually. He performed Theyyam in 30 residents of Pulayas. But he died from very young. And after the death of Vijayakumar, two other people, Rameshan and Vijayan, who undertook the function of performing Muttappan for Pulayas, they still continue. I had an opportunity to interview one of such performers, and he said, there are several local variations in performing Muttappan. If somebody comes and asks me to do the rite for Muttappan, I would say in advance that I cannot do the rite in accordance with the prevailing local variations. I do only what I have learned. I would read this assertion not as an indicator of the incompetence of the performer, but as a statement with socio-political dimensions. Firstly, the Muttappan he manifests, for that matter, the Pulaya manifests, is already modern, wherein the regional variations, which is still an expression of differentiation, has no room in the present politics of challenging humiliation and discrimination. Secondly, encompassing Muttappan without regional differences could also be an imagination of a community identifying, erasing internal difference in ongoing struggle against inequality. What is important for us in the present discussion is that, unlike Mada, the Pulaya reacted to Uruvilakku by bringing the otherwise considered oppressive institutions of ritual and caste back in the struggle against inequality. They were not appealing to the state, nor was redefining Theyyam as an art and ritual specialist as artist. They were asking people to identify as caste on the basis of their humiliation and discrimination and relations of position in social hierarchy. In this attempt, they were not reproducing some medieval institution, but identifying the dynamics of these institutions to challenge the very hierarchy it perpetuated uninterruptedly. So what I was trying to say is that I'll stop here by saying three sentences. Uruvilakku, I would say, surfaced the tension otherwise lurked in the social structure of North Malabar. The challenge to pre-colonial social order that had led to the disappearance of feudal relations, dissemination of revolutionary ideology of possibility of an egalitarian society backed by rational thinking, catered by by scores of modern institutions, and many similar developments have been used as signifiers to identify the shift from medieval to the modern. However, my analysis has illustrated that in the apparent level, it may seem like there is discontinuity. But what experienced in the lived everyday life was a continuity of the pre-modern. This continuity should not be reduced as a continuation of any essential past into the present or repetition in itself. Rather, it is a repetition with difference, a continuous becoming. It is from this understanding I argued that there is limitation in an analysis that tries to depict a social order as either modern or traditional. Any thinking centered in such dichotomy will limit the understanding of the dynamics of the social. There is neither such thinking to be called, there is neither such thing to be called pure tradition, nor is it invented in the interface with the modern. Rather, everything is always already modern. I was reading basically from the text which is in the making, and sorry for that. I stop here, and if you have any suggestions, queries, or questions, I will try to respond to it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for the informative lecture. It was indeed very engaging to learn more about the Theyyam performers and contestation over Uruvilakku in North Malabar in a new dimensions used for the history of writing. Now the session is open for the discussion. Please post your queries and comments in the chat box. Let me read the questions, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a few questions in the chat box. First questions we have from the Santosh, research scholar of Sri Shankaracharya University, Kaladi. The questions: the cultic space where Peruvannan denied opportunity to perform was a Tharwad temple or a temple owned by a caste organization.
Okay, the cultic space where Peruvannan denied opportunity to perform was a Tharawad temple or a temple owned by, it's not a temple or Tharawad. It is actually a newly constructed house by a person named Gopal. It was, Muthappan was actually performing, Ram Peruvannan was invited to perform Muthappan in a front yard of a newly constructed house. It is not a traditional, otherwise called traditional sacred space of Theyyam like Tharawad or shrine. In the case of Muthappan, it is interesting. He can be invoked at any place. Normally, it says that Adikkum Muttam Podikkalam Adharamai. The front yard of a house is the ideal sacred space for invoking Muthappan. That's what I could say. So it's not a Tharawad or temple or shrine. Rather, it is the residence of a person where Ram Peruvannan is invited to perform Muthappan.
Sanup?
I can read actually. I can see that.
I think Sanup's call has dropped.
Okay, sir. Okay. Second question.
Sanup, are you here?
Hello.
Yeah. Please, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second question from Gopika, research scholar of SUSC Kaladi. Questions: has many scholars point out Theyyam provided voice to the downtrodden against caste exploitation and caste segregation. But at the same time, Uruvilakku seems to be a best example for the Theyyam communities attempt to keep a strong social segregation with themselves. What could be the rationale behind it? Could you please comment on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What could be the rationale behind? Could you please comment on it? Okay.
Okay.
There are multiple ways in which you can approach this issue. Normally, it is said that Theyyam is a voice of the downtrodden. It gives space for the downtrodden to reveal the injustice the larger society gave to their ancestors and so on and so forth. But interestingly, this kind of argument came only in the second half of the middle of the 20th century. Till then, it was not considered so. It was not. We don't have any evidence to say that this is a manifestation of the power of the downtrodden, of the lower class against the upper caste. There is a historical context for the reinterpretation of the whole ritual of Theyyam in that fashion. We know that the national movement and the emergence of revolutionary political party, the Communist Party, it was a context for creating such an argument. Till then, we don't have much evidence to say that it was considered so. It might have considered so. But the important thing is that while arguing that this is a manifestation of downtrodden, the voice of the downtrodden against the upper class, they were bringing back consciously ritual from the field of the religion and divinity to that of a social and economic things. In that way, that was very important thing. It has its own value. But most of the things, if you are looking at the actual ritual space, you will see that it was not like so. Often, Theyyam performers were mistreated at the shrine, the ritual space. Till 1970s, even now, you can see all kinds of caste discrimination operating in the ritual space. So there is difficulty. On the one side, there is a conscious move to take Theyyam away from the aspects of divine to that of the social, so that it will have a new meaning, a new potential in the ongoing political process of the middle of the 20th century or the second half of the 20th century. That way, that has importance. And second thing is, at the same, Uruvilakku seems to be a best example for the Theyyam community's attempt to keep a strong social segregation within themselves. It is not whether it is strong social segregation, like the reproduction of social segregation that is meant. Of course, one aspect of that is very much there. But at the same time, what is much more interesting is that whenever you try to make people segregated, whenever the dominant try to differentiate people on the basis of caste and its logic, you will see those who suffered from such segregation, such classification, coming up with resistance in a completely different way. Here, they were not moving away from that kinds of segregating or ritual, traditional institutions to resist such segregation, but rather you will see appropriating such aspect of such institution which segregate themselves to challenge the segregation. That's the importance of Uruvilakku, and not mere a segregation aspect. You can use the traditional institution which reproduces caste hierarchy to resist the very reproduction of caste hierarchy. that makes the issue of Uruvilakku much more important. That's what I would argue.
Okay, sir. And third question from Gobiga. The event of Uruvilakku, as you described in your presentation, appears to embody the confrontation between modernity and tradition, as modern performer tried to come out from the traditionally maintained abstentions. Then your opinion, what has been resolved at the end, whether the tradition compromises with the confrontation with the modernity or vice versa?
I was telling the other way. If you are looking closely, the things happened in the whole issue of Uruvilakku. You will see that there is any argument projected using the dichotomy of modernity and tradition is not going to work. That is what I was trying to argue. So the committee of the shrine, the newly formed committee of the shrine, has nothing to do with the traditional aspect of maintaining a shrine. It is a completely new thing, with a president like any other society or political party have, not the priest who owns authority. And like the Muthappan, the Pulaya performs, it is not the Muthappan of the traditionally, if there is anything called tradition. So you could see that way the whole issue of Uruvilakku telling us that sometimes, or most of the times, trying to analyze the social processes using the dichotomy of modernity and tradition won't work. That is what actually I was arguing.
Okay. Next question from is Vijisha, MPhil scholar of CUC Kaladi. Question: Theyyam performers belong to the downtrodden caste and they hold an important position in the Theyyam complex. People consider Theyyam as a god and seeking blessing from its performer. How this phenomena is possible in a caste-bound and hierarchical social situations?
This is a question that has nothing to do with my presentation. But anyway, this is see, there are many, while trying to understand an institution, you have to understand that institution in a holistic perspective. So there will be people who are going to watch the Theyyam performance with the interest that they may get, they would get some pleasure watching the dance aspect of Theyyam or singing aspect of Theyyam. There are some people like that. There are some other group of people. They just go to the shrine to watch Theyyam, but their main interest is not to watch Theyyam, but to look around and find and to engage in some kind of matchmaking. That's another thing. There are people who go there, worship the deity as if it's their ancestor reappeared before them and it has divine power. So there are all kinds of people, all ways in which Theyyam is aspected. Theyyam is not appropriated on a single way, but now there is a move to reduce all other aspect of Theyyam into one, which is it is purely divine being. Actually, Theyyam may have some, I don't know, some divine aspect, but it is more than that. It is a larger social institution having different effect on the social structure.
Okay, next question from Sandosh. Question: This confrontation is not between medieval caste but newly formed caste identity. The change from Tharwad temple to a caste temple must be noted. Further, even when the Vannan community look for the opportunities.
Yeah, the confrontation is not between medieval caste, of course, but newly formed caste identity. That's what I am trying to say is that there is no medieval and there is no more. We cannot differentiate clearly between the medieval and the modern. There is a repetition of certain things of the past and the recreation of the new things. So it is always it's not a, we are not analyzing. We should not analyze things from the perspective of what we say. Something which existed somewhere as a static thing. No institution is static. It is continuously becoming. So there are certain aspects of medieval continuing in the present. So that is what I was trying to say. It is always already becoming. It's not something which is something which ended at some point and a completely new things emerged at another point. You could see the continuity of the medieval in the modern as well. The change from the Tarawa temple to caste temple must be, of course, that is what I was saying. So it is, that's why I said it is a kind of modern office bearers. I use even the word that a kind of modern office bearers to indicate the changes happen to the structure of the shrine itself. I rather prefer the word shrine instead of temple.
Okay, next question from Rohini Mehana. The question, I was wondering if we can consider Theyyam as an example of epistemic resistance with the Kerala subaltern cosmopolitanism. If this can be called as a performance of caste and body, then how does narrating a socio-cultural landscape by Dalit in Kerala act as a potent way of rewriting history from the margins?
Yeah, if I was, if we can consider Theyyam as an example of epistemic resistance within Kerala subaltern cosmopolitanism. Can we consider Theyyam as an example of epistemic resistance within Kerala subaltern cosmopolitanism? I don't know exactly. The question is not that much clear for me. Let me think one more. Can we consider Theyyam as an example of epistemic resistance within the Kerala subaltern cosmopolitanism? All these, I don't know. I don't know how to respond to the first part of the question. Let me see the second part. If this can be called as a performance of caste and body, and then how does narrating a socio-cultural landscape by Dalits in Kerala act as a potent way of rewriting history from the margin? Of course, second part is much more important for me. The performance, I prefer not to use the word performance because performance in one way or other connote the aspect of art. And I was trying to understand the whole process, not from the perspective of performance theory, but from anthropological point of view. Performance performance prevent us understanding the whole dynamic of the issue under our discussion. That's what I felt. But for the time being, performance of caste and body, then how does narrating a socio-cultural landscape of the Dalits Kerala act as a potent for rewriting history from the margin? That's what I was, in a way that contains what I was trying to argue. Somebody earlier argued that while discussing modernity, you should also try to understand modernity from the margin. This can be considered an aspect towards that. It's a kind of rewriting the whole history, whole experience from the margin, and in the very presentation of their caste identity, the appropriation of Buddhapan into their body, they were imagining a completely different kind of social order, which need not have to be equal to that of a modern, equal to what a modern society would bring forth, like an egalitarian society or so. But despite that, the very act of accepting a ritual which is denied to them by themselves into their body and appropriating all kinds of in bracket traditional institutions, including ritual and caste, these people were actually writing modernity from the margin. That is what I can respond to it.
Okay. Hopefully, this is the last question for this session. Question Santosh. Outside temple premises, identifying themselves as artists, they argued for their traditional right to perform in the Tarwad or caste temple.
Outside the temple premises, identify themselves as artists, they argue for the traditional right to perform in the Tarwad or caste temple. Outside the temple premises, okay, in public spaces, identifying themselves as artists, okay, they argue for the traditional rights. So outside the temple premises, they don't have to argue for traditional rights. It doesn't matter in the public spheres. It matters only in the ritual complex of North Malabar, and especially in the sacred spaces like shrine and Tarawads and other similar institutions. So outside these institutions, even in Malabar, anybody can do Theyyam performance. For example, there were occasions of performing Theyyam on stage. As part of May Day rally, a Theyyam was performed on the stage. There were other occasions of performing Theyyam as a monthly cultural program organized by what is called fine art societies. So in such cases, the question of traditional rights won't matter. That's what I know.
Okay, sir. Another question. What is modernity from the margins? A question from Jinu.
Yeah, actually, what I was referring to what Gopal Guru, Professor Gopal Guru was discussing at some point, and he was critiquing the European centralized kind of disseminated modernity. Was arguing there should be a conception of modernity developed by thinkers from the margins. Like, how do we understand the new questions raised by Srinarayana Guru, or new questions raised by Ayyankali, Jyotiba Phule, Ayodhya Das, etc. And such questions, their interventions actually have a different orientations, a different point of origin. And it's not from the European metropolis that the new kind of thinking emerged. And we don't have to accept such things. So there are other spaces, other locations, other individuals, other way of understanding things. And it do have some, it too is meaningful in the discussion of modernity. And to refer to such positions, he used the word modernity from the margin. That's what I was referring to.
Okay. It was indeed okay. Another question from chat box. Question from Amil Varghese. I could find some similarity with the ongoing issue of women of all ages entering Shabarimala. In the case of Peruvannan, it was the caste angle was very much evident, whereas to the Shabarimala issue, it was gender that dominated the discourse. This is an observation.
Yeah, of course, it's an observation, so I don't have to comment in that way. But it's always good to understand. That's why I began with saying that we should have a method to understand the actual dynamics of the issue under our study. The importance of situation analysis is that you can compare. Comparison is not should not be on the similarity appears on the surface level. A comparison should be on the value on which each event occurs. So, if you are following kind of situation analysis, you will understand. You will be able to understand the actual dynamics of the situations and the difference such situations creates. There may be having some similarities between these two practices, but I don't think that both these things are both these things should be studied from a completely different perspectives. Actually, I have written an article on Sabarimala issue. You can get it online, where I have actually used this. You can see how I use the situation analysis to understand the actual dynamics of things happened in Sabarimala. So it's called Maheshi's Rage. It's available. You can download free and online. It came up in Anthropology Today, a journal called Anthropology Today.
Okay, the question is over. It was
Okay,
indeed a wonderful discussion. Thank you, sir, for answering all of the questions so patiently. Now, I would like to Bhavya, our PhD scholar, for the vote of thanks. Over to you, Bhavya.
Good evening. It is now my pleasant duty to propose vote of thanks on behalf of the Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi and History Department. I express my sincere gratitude to our diverse speaker, Dr. Dineshan, for sparing his valuable time to be with us this evening. Today's lecture is full of knowledge and it gives deep insights to the topic and also revealed some interesting facts of Theyyam. I thank him most heartily, sir, and also thank all the participants for paying your attention and learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for inviting, especially Professor Shiva and all other in the department, including students, research scholars, and my former classmates and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dineshan, for the wonderful evening. Such a pleasure to listen to you. Thank you all for being here. Tomorrow we gather together for the last lecture of the National Conference, the 15th lecture. See you all tomorrow. Bye for now.